X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach, and what a magical day it is.
Abracadabra!
Man, I'll be honest, again, just as a world history check, it is January 19th, Tuesday night, as we are recording this, so any large events that have happened between now and then,
we don't know.
We have no knowledge of.
We're just hoping for the best.
Tonight, so far, it's looking like a good week.
Yeah.
And I will have cut that out in editing if things go south.
Okay. Let's hope they don't. Let's hope for a magical week. Because on this episode, we are talking exclusively about Illyana Rasputin, a.k.a. Magik.
There are other X-Men in these stories. So it's not exclusive to Magik. But no, we are going to talk a lot about Magik. I love Magik.
like Magik.
Has any other character in X-Men... I don't think any other character in X-Men has had the kind of renaissance that Magik has had in the last decade.
Definitely not.
And I don't think there are many characters in comics that have gone from kind of an 80s afterthought to what Magik is now. Like, it's great.
Yeah, it's kind of wild that Magik was off the board for as long as she was. Like, there was serious restraint there. And I think part of that does have to do with what you're talking about, is that, maybe the potential of the character was not as exploited as it could be back in the New Mutants days. But it is amazing to see her back and such a central character in where we are today in X-Canon.
I love it. She's got a big sword. She has bangs. It's what you want from her. She's not incredibly racist. So better than the movie.
Oh God, yeah. That was so unfortunate. Such great casting and such a terrible script. But we're gonna go back to Illyana's origin here. We've already ranked the mini. But we're going to start with the story that leads into the mini.
That's right. The first story on our list is a big pivot point for Illyana Rasputina. And we're getting to this pivot point because, do you know why, Adam?
We have I feel like a celebrity requester here.
You say celebrity. We know her. It's Kat Fox. Kat is she works the con circuit a lot. She is a cosplayer. She does a lot of fun stuff. Loves Magik. I once joked to her at C2E2 this last year. I saw Rod Race doing a commission, and I popped over and said, "Hey, Kat, I don't mean to freak you out, but that guy at that table over there is drawing you." And she's like, "What?" And she looks over. You're an idiot.
Well, Kat Fox has sort of become synonymous with Illyana in a lot of ways, so I think it's appropriate that this entire episode comes out of her request. So this first story is The Uncanny X-Men number 160, Chutes and Ladders.
It is Chutes and Ladders, and those kinds of Chutes and Ladders can only come from our Patreon at patreon.com/comicsxf. We'll talk about that at the end, but that's how Kat got this episode request, and that's why we're doing this. Literally, all she said was Magik, and I said, okay, that's fair. That makes sense. This is a issue from 1982, written by Chris Claremont. Pencils on this one by Brent Anderson. It's kind of a fill-in terms of the long tail of this run. Bob Wycheck does the inks. Glennis Wine does the colors. Tommy Orrs is, of course, our letterer here.
Always. And we're just coming off, if you remember numerically, we're just coming off Storm having been transformed by Dracula and then defeating him. So we're starting this issue just sort of like pseudo danger room fighting on the patio at Octopusheim.
Yeah. Again, I feel like we talked about this recently, but one of my favorite additions to X-Canon in the Krakoan era is that we're all accepting that Magneto had this weird octopus island in the 80s, and we're just like, no, we're vibing. This is a thing, and we need to continue to go back to this weird-ass octopus island that he had.
Sure.
And it's great.
It's not like
a lot of weird things happen on that island.
Yeah, and in particular, we have the abduction of Ileana by the evil demon lord Belasco. So this is kind of crazy. He's going to transport them over to his world, and bad stuff is going to happen.
It's an interesting setup for a story because it's very obvious, by the fact that a big change happens here, that Claremont's setting up something with Ileana.
Oh yeah.
Like this is a big thing happening with her, but it takes a while for it to actually develop. Like when is the Magic miniseries, the Storm and Ileana series? That's not for another year after this.
Yeah, they do
at the end of 83.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were really leaving people hanging on some of the big threads here, which involve the off-panel aging up of Ileana that happens towards the end of this issue, which I think for a lot of readers was probably a big question mark going on, until that miniseries finally came out.
Yeah. So but we do get the broad strokes in this. So on Magneto's island base in the Bermuda Triangle, where there's Cthulhu monsters.
Yes.
Canonically, there are Cthulhu monsters on this island.
Yes.
We find that out in one of the Uncanny X-Men first classes, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a good issue, but we're not talking about that here. The Demon Lord Belasco, as you well know from your Kazar comics, he tempts Ileana, who is baby. She's like a little one. She's like 5, I think, in this.
She's little.
He tempts her. Yeah, she's toddling around there.
Yeah.
And he tempts her and brings her into limbo, where time has no real meaning. Because he wants to, do the Ileana stuff. He wants to corrupt her and use her soul to unleash the Elder Gods onto this world.
Right. And while she's there, we're going to run into alternate versions, living and dead, of the X-Men in what appears to be an alternate yet same timeline. Like you said, time doesn't really have a meaning here. So we have a Storm that appears later in the miniseries who has aged up and become a wizard. We have a dead Wolverine. We have an evil Nightcrawler. Kitty is being held captive with her skeleton sucked out of her body. So there's a lot going on here in a very short period of time.
There is. And a lot of this issue is just it's like looking at a weird reflection. It's like, hey, look at all this weird stuff that happened to the X-Men. And I'm really curious how it was received at the time. Because it seems like a weird one-off with consequences for the most minor character in the cast.
Yeah, but it also
turns into a much bigger thing. Whether Claremont was planning all these threads or if he said, here's some cool ideas, I'll fill in the details later.
I'm sure it was that, but
yeah, it's probably
I do not get the idea reading this that Claremont had some like master plan. But what is interesting and I think is cool is that so many of the little elements that we associate with Ileana's grand story are already here. The introduction of the stepping discs is in this issue. We get introduced to Belasco and we sort of get a general idea of what his master plan is. we get introduced to Sim, who is very much a Cerebus homage here in his first appearance.
Yeah, you ever feel uncomfortable about how Sim is a direct homage to Cerebus creator David Sim, who's an incredible misogynist to the point where he's torpedoed his own career in comics to go on weird rants about how women are the devil. And yet that kind of makes sense for this evil demon Sim whose only goal in comics is to ruin Illyana's life.
It did strangely work out that way, and I can't really blame Claremont for it. What is this, 82? This is in the early heady days where everything Sim was doing was very celebrated by the comics community, so we have some time before people realize that he'd completely gone off the deep end. But yeah, we do have Sim wearing Cerebus's trademark vest. Even the first panel where we see his face, he looks a little bit more like the Aardvark than he does in later appearances.
Yeah, it's a cool design. This is a fun little issue. I think it's more important than it is good. Like, it's not bad, but it's in a weird time where X-Men, like, it hadn't, like, fully pivoted into what will be like the Paul Smith stuff, right? Where it really gets like its second wind after Byrne leaves the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in that weird spot where, like I mentioned, the Dracula issue, which is standalone with Sienkiewicz doing the pencils, and Claremont's trying some stuff. And it's great that he did, because we're able to follow up on a lot of that for years and years afterwards.
Yeah, it's it's not bad, but the book's about to go into the Brood Saga and really actually like kick off like arc after arc after arc of nearly perfect X-Men. Like, it hits the Brood Saga and then it's nothing but good comics for like, I don't know. Let's see, 2 years?
Yeah.
Until the Kulan Goth storyline.
Hey, have we ranked that yet?
Hey, no, we haven't, but I can tell you where it is on the list of things to rank. It's scheduled, but our schedule is pretty far out,
pretty
so
long. Okay.
that makes no promises.
Something to look forward to.
We'll talk about that eventually. I hate it, but that's not the point.
Oh, see, okay. Well, we'll talk about that on another time.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement. This is sort of like a weird one-off that, taken in isolation is maybe a little bit of, I don't want to say a mess, but it's kind of muddled, while at the same time introducing some really cool concepts that are definitely going to be successfully implemented for decades to come.
Yep. So I think we should probably just rank this one.
Yeah.
It's weird that this one's important to Illyana, but it's not about Illyana at all. Like,
no, she's mostly off screen.
Yeah, she's a tool in this, and it feels like it's like, oh yeah, this is a key Illyana story, but it's mostly key for what it sets up.
Yeah.
Unlike the number one story on our list of 456 X-Men stories that we've ranked, which is the House of X, the Powers of 10. The number 100th story on our list is the Brian Michael Bendis and Fraser Irving Limbo arc from Uncanny X-Men. Number 200 is X-Men Gold number 30, that time that Kitty Pryde phased through Colossus's hand instead of marrying him. Number 300 is X-Campus. Number 400 is Wolverine 49, Better to Give, ... And then 456 is the Draco. So this is better than X-Campus.
Yeah, I highlighted on the list. We have the issue that comes before this up at 150, and I don't think we're that high on the list.
No, the Dracula one's better.
It is. It's a little bit more of a solid one shot, whereas this, as we said, is kind of a weird thing. The art's not as good. No disrespect to Brent, but he's not Sienkiewicz, and we
don't have to say no disrespect to Brent Anderson. One of his stories is really high on the list.
Yeah. But this is not like, his best work. even though he's doing a solid job telling this story,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. I feel like all of these things get fleshed out much better later on. I see you've highlighted at 183 Kitty Pryde and Wolverine.
Yeah, I mean, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine's better than this.
I would agree.
I think totally unrelated, but Ultimate Comics Hawkeye is better than this.
Yep, that's down at 212. But I think we're
222
getting
is...
into the right.
go ahead.
I think we're getting into the sort of the right realm here. Maybe in like the top half of the 200s, because
That's where I'm thinking.
yeah, like this is still pretty vital to what's going on. I would put it ahead of, the cocaine arc of Wolverine, for instance, at 234.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd put it below at 222, the Captain America Secret Empire story. The one where Captain America doesn't turn into a Nazi, where he just fights them.
Yeah. How do you feel about it? You know what? If it's not as good as Secret Empire, I do think it's better than the one that's below that on our list, which is Generation X Volume 2, 6, and 7. So I think that might be a good spot for it on the list.
Yeah, I think that makes it a very good number 223 on our list. That's Uncanny X-Men 160, Chutes and Ladders.
Nice. Very nice. And we are going to stick with Illyana and Uncanny X-Men and zoom back. Well, is it Back to the Future? We're going to zoom. Where are we zooming?
We're
zooming
past
to
the future.
Yes.
So if we went into the past to go to 160, then we are going back to a future, but not the future, with 1988's Uncanny X-Men 231. It's called Dressed for Dinner. And it's not the story I thought it was when we were reading this, or when we were setting this up. I thought it was the New Mutants issue that actually chronologically happens right before this, where Illyana fights Forge to bring her brother back from the dead. Where instead, this is when Illyana is fighting the Baba Yaga, the Russian demon ghost lady with a chicken leg hut, fighting her and Sim for control of Limbo, and she accidentally summons what she thinks is the ghost of her brother, but really is Colossus pretending to be a ghost.
Yeah, because the Aussie X-Men are really committing to their bit. And to the point where poor Colossus can't even let his sister let her know that he is still alive. So he is summoned to Limbo to fist fight it out with the now techno-organic virus-infected hordes of Sim in Limbo.
And the right.
And the right, because we have the little smiley face guys from the right here as well. And all of them are just sort of like fist fighting it out. This is cool. I like this issue a lot. It's Rick Leonardi doing the artwork with Dan Green on inks. And of course, Claremont is writing this one. Now, the issue does start with a little cute scene with Rogue and Colossus, where Rogue burns her hand on Colossus's metal body, which I think is kind of fun. And
Colossus has been sitting out in the outback sun so long that his body is so hot that it spontaneously combusts his drawing notebook.
Oh yeah, he burns up his sketchbook. The poor guy.
Listen, if Colossus has any ongoing thread between, say, Secret Wars and let's say Astonishing X-Men, it's that it really sucks to be Colossus and things are always going bad for the guy.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't handle it well.
No.
Let's not put that aside. He handles it poorly almost every time, but on the grand scheme of things, a lot of bad stuff is happening to Colossus in a very short succession of time.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And we've talked about the tragic life of Pyotr Rasputin many a time here. What I think is kind of funny is that he's not actually summoned by Illyana. It's that Gateway just kind of decides, by like vibing with the universe, that he needs to send Peter somewhere and just happens
Gateway
to be
knows.
able to send him there. It's great.
It's fun. We get some really good Rick Leonardi art here that I enjoy. We get good moments between Colossus and Ileana in the lead up to Limbo. And that's something that, because they were in different books and because after the Mutant Massacre, the X-Men and New Mutants pretty handily split in half for the most part.
Yep.
The New Mutants go off on a space-time adventure for a little while, and then boom, it's Fall of the Mutants, and everyone thinks the X-Men are dead. So we get one of the few Colossus and Ileana moments as far as them relating. And it's Ileana working through grief of, my brother is dead, and my parents don't know that I'm 16.
Right. Yeah, she's feeling pretty lonely here. And we don't really, this is an interesting issue because we don't really know what's going on until the very last panel where Sim has this little exposition dump. But Ileana is working on a term paper about Mikhail Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita, which listeners, I had never even heard about it. So I guess the first time I read through this run, I must have just glossed over this. But I decided to start reading it this week. I'm about a third of the way through the book. It is so good. But magically, 3 characters from that story, who are sort of the representations of Satan on Earth, start and come in, and then they're followed up by Baba Yaga, who decides she's gonna eat the New Mutants. She's going to fatten them up and she's going to eat them. And what we learn at the very end of this story is that all of this is happening because the border between Limbo and the real world is becoming thinner and thinner, that the demons from Limbo are escaping over into the real world because of whatever's going on with Ileana. And then of course all of this is leading towards Inferno in the end of that story. And I think this is a really good building block towards that eventual crossover story.
It is. It adds a lot of elements. It adds the Colossus and Ileana familiar relationship, which is really key to those New Mutants issues. It shows Ileana's losing control, and just from a very building blocks plot standpoint says, hey, this is not over and it's not ending well.
Yeah.
Y'all, this is gonna be a bad one. And it's cool to see that happen. I like seeing this. It's almost more essential for what it sets up than what it actually does in the story. But I do think that this is better than that Chutes and Ladders issue, because it has that emotional core between Colossus and Ileana.
Yeah, there's a key scene towards the end where, you can kind of see that Ileana is very close to figuring out that this is, of course, her real brother. He transforms back from his metal form, and they have this very genuine moment of togetherness, even though she really does believe that he's dead. And it really hits home. Because you have to, if you know that the character is going to be de-aged again at some point, you have to establish this relationship and the love between these two characters. And I think this issue does that really, really well.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's one you might not think of as key, but it works really well in the story.
Yeah, that was the only thing that I wanted to note, was that this is, as part of the Aussie era, part of the Silvestri run, and it is odd to kind of see the expressive, almost cartooniness of Rick Leonardi's work as the fill-in artist on issues in this time period. Over time, I've grown such an appreciation for what Leonardi does on the page. And I think it really helps to sell the emotions of the characters with what he's doing with their facial expressions and their body language. He does all of that very, very well.
But he's a different type of artist than Silvestri.
Yeah.
He's not of that image class.
No.
He's closer to the Dodsons are today.
Sure.
than someone who's pulling from like those image influences.
Yeah.
And that's fine. It's just, I think in a vacuum it works really well. I could see in a run it being a bit disjointed.
Yeah, but on its own, I think it's a fantastic standalone issue. And I agree. I think it is better than where we just ranked Uncanny 160, Chutes and Ladders. I would definitely go higher up in the list here.
I'm looking at number 181 right now, and that's Uncanny X-Men 268 Madripoor Nights, which is another standalone one-shot. And I think Madripoor Nights is probably better.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's sort of the more classic of the two issues, but I think we're in the right place. Like, we've got the same sort of emotional quality that we do to, like, at 184, we have Power Pack 20. And I think that this story is probably better on its own than what we have at 185, which is the final arc of All New Wolverine. What do you think about that comparison?
Yeah, I was looking there and I said, yeah, I think this is better than Old Woman Laura. I would say it's a couple spots up from that is Kitty Pryde and Wolverine at 183, and I think this is actually better than that, but not as good as X-Men Endangered Species at 182, right above it, which is that mini series that ran through a bunch of issues as like 10-page backups.
Right, where we really started to see the moral boundaries collapsing for Mr. Beast. So I think that's a perfect place on the list. That would make it our new 183, right?
That would make it our new 183. This is Uncanny X-Men 231, and I'm calling it Colossus Pretends to be a Ghost, so I remember it later. Because I won't remember Dressed for Dinner. That makes no sense.
Hey,
Chris, I don't know what you were talking about. No one has dinner in well, I guess the Baba Yaga wants to have dinner.
Oh, man.
Baba Yaga wants to eat some kids.
Yeah.
And speaking of things eating kids.
Oh, my goodness. When you said we were going to talk about this arc, I was actually really happy. Because...
It's weird, right?
It's weird, but
this is a weird one.
It's weird, but I really enjoyed rereading it. So I don't know if you felt the same way. This is a much more recent story. This is Extraordinary X-Men 13 to 16, right?
17.
Oh, 17. Okay, Kingdoms Fall.
Oh wait, no, 16. You're right, 16. I'm dumb.
You're not dumb.
Kingdoms Fall.
They're just numbers. This is, yeah, because 17 is where we get the IVX crossover. That we like a bunch. But this is that time that Sapna...
You can't even say this.
That Sapna got trapped in the sword.
Hey, who's Sapna? Because she's never appeared again, and that's upsetting.
Well, Sapna is a character that... Illyana encountered early in the Extraordinary X-Men run, and rescued. She was in trouble, and Illyana kind of took her under her wing. Unfortunately, there's another malevolent creature that has also been searching out, was looking for Illyana, and then settled on little Sapna, and that is the World Eater. Which is sort of this like tentacle-y, Lovecraftian, like, I don't even know what to call it. It's just this monstrous thing.
It's demon. It's gonna eat magic demon. That's all it is. This is written by Jeff Lemire. Pencils and inks on this are by Victor Ibanez. Guillermo Morrigan does a little bit of layout work on this. J. David Ramos does the colors. VC's Joe Caramanga. He letters this.
Yeah.
Extraordinary X-Men is so weird.
It is, and they didn't do it any favors by shoehorning in the Apocalypse Wars mandate. Like, that's what's coming right before these issues, and you could tell that Lemire probably wanted to go more directly into the direction he's going in these issues. But unfortunately, there was an X-Men movie coming out, and I have a feeling that there was a little bit of a synergy mandate there. Do you get that impression as well?
Yeah, I get the impression that since Apocalypse War came out over the summer, that the movie X-Men Apocalypse came out, that somebody had the bright idea that maybe they should tie the books into Apocalypse, which was weird because the books all started with the bright idea of, hey, we have to tie this into the new X-Men status quo, that there's gas clouds taking over the world and killing all mutants. And we do have to make sure we really soon follow this up with a story about how, the Inhumans and the X-Men are going to war. We got to resolve that. And that, I sympathize with Lemire and Bunn and Dennis Hallam, who were really leading the line at the time, because they had very little room to do their stories.
No, I mean, and like, forget about doing anything sort of like long range or planning anything. I mean, these guys were like, it was arc by arc, and it's not giving them a lot of breathing room.
It's not, but I think this is the most Jeff Lemire like the book gets. Like this I would imagine is the closest we get to like his pure vision of, hey, I want to tell an X-Men story. Mm-hmm. Given the circumstances that I'm in, what do we got? Because like he's the one who said let's have him live in limbo.
Right.
He made sure Magik was on the team. He did some stuff. He brought in Sapna to begin with. So these were there, and the emotional core of this story is Illyana having a ward and seeing a young girl get possessed and being taken over by a malevolent demonic force. And Illyana's got a lot of unresolved issues about that and will stop at nothing to make that happen. And to her credit, Storm immediately realizes this and says, hey, we're going to go stop this, right? I'm going to tag along.
Yeah, it's a great callback. And Illyana is like, no, you're not coming with me. And Storm is like, the hell I'm not.
Storm says, I'm Storm from X-Men. Right. I do what I want.
Yeah, you can't tell me not to go. And I think what I like most about this is Ibanez is doing this. This may not be up to the artwork level that we see later on the Jean Grey issues that Vic does, but I really like the artwork here. And there are some really, really beautiful 2-page spreads. There's one where the two are going through all of the realms that the World Eater has eaten. And it's this beautiful spread of them hopping through these portals from world to world. And it's so cool. I think that what's not successful about this arc has more to do with the fact that Storm and Illyana get stuck in one of those areas and have to fight against a quartet of new characters that don't really factor into the story much more than to say World Eater bad. And like, we could have figured that out just by looking around.
So thinking about this issue this arc after going back. This arc is a distillation of Jeff Lemire as a writer. If it took place in Canada and was about a father and son instead of a surrogate like mother-daughter relationship, teacher-student, it would be the most Jeff Lemire thing. Because this has a lot of the same like deep emotional beats of, your relationship to another person, especially someone you look up to, or like a parent caring about their child and having to take care of them and make sure that they're okay, and the anxieties that come with that. That's the good stuff about Jeff Lemire. That's the sad dad stuff that I, as a sad dad, really enjoy. And there's people who dislike that about Jeff Lemire, and I cannot argue with it because it's ever present in his work. But this also has the same kind of downside that you get in something like a Black Hammer or something like a Gideon Falls, where the antagonist is this conceptual thing that's like, we're fighting against bad, but it's not it's not developed or interesting in a very big way, and it feels like, okay, we know World Eater is bad,
Right.
but we don't know much more about it. Like, it's less compelling than Galactus, and maybe part of that's because Galactus is a 40-story tall purple man in a skirt and a Kirby hat, but World Eater being generic tentacle monster with no motivation that we know is not going to actually eat the world because the X-Men have to fight the Inhumans in an issue. It doesn't land well.
You know, and what's interesting is I was thinking as a comparison that Mark Guggenheim later on X-Men Gold at least takes the time to establish his big bad from Negative Zone War in a standalone issue. You know, Lemire never has the opportunity really to go back and give that sort of character arc to this thing that they're all going to be fighting against. He also has the unenviable task, and I'll give him credit. I think he actually pulls this off, of trying to work in another relationship plotline here, which is Nightcrawler on a desperate search for Colossus, who has been transformed into one of Apocalypse's horsemen, and trying to save him. And the story does build up to this enormous pitch where this tornado effect of this tentacle monster with Sapna and the sword right at the beginning of the charge are about to eat the building. Is Forge going to allow Apocalypse to heal Colossus? Like, it does feel to a certain extent like there are some stakes here. But as you said, you know at the end of the day that this is all going to get wrapped up. You know that this thing is not going to eat the world because it doesn't have the momentous background to you know, make any of that worthwhile.
Well, and it's not what this arc was being, or this run was being built up to, and this whole era was being built up to.
Right.
In fact, it's coming right before then. So you know, reading this, that this isn't the end game.
No.
So, like, there's not even a chance of big sacrifice or anything like that. It's just, hey, the X-Men are going to defeat this. And they lose Sapna, who we find out is living in Ileana's sword. It has never been brought up again.
Well,
we'll have to talk about that someday.
Well, no, I think we could talk about it right now. The arc does end with Ileana kind of brooding off on a limbo mountain somewhere, and the sword talks to her, and Ileana is like, Sapna? So now the character of Sapna has not been talked about in continuity at all since Lemire's run. We have heard Jordan say publicly, there is nobody in that sword, which does beg the question, where did she go? And I don't think we will ever get the answer to that question.
Jordan can say whatever he wants until I see little Sapna running around with her demon boogers. I will assume she's living in Ileana's sword and she's just very quiet.
Maybe one day, decades from now, a writer will pluck that obscure plot point back. Because I also do appreciate that Glob gets a great moment in here. He gets to beat on Apocalypse Colossus for a second. It's great.
Yeah, we don't talk enough about how Glob Herman is a key character in Extraordinary X-Men, and Jeff Lemire did the beautiful work of helping normalize Glob Herman in the X-Men. Like, Jason Aaron had him as a tertiary character in Wolverine in the X-Men, and then he was I guess one of the co-leads of Spider-Man in the X-Men from Elliot Kalin. And then Lemire was like, nah, he's him and Annalay and No Girl and Ernst. They're going to be my kid X-Men. And that's a weird choice. But they do get some good moments here where Glob and the very buff Annalay, everyone forgets about that time Annalay got swole because he was trapped in the future.
One of the best issues of this run is Extraordinary X-Men number 9, where this small team goes off into like this multiple realities looking for, this is, I think the first or second issue of, I think it's the second issue of Apocalypse Wars. It's such a good issue. And everybody forgets about everything that happened there because, Glob levels up.
It's weird and kind of bad as an arc.
No, I'm not talking about
it's not...
Just that issue alone.
Is good. Apocalypse War is not good.
No. It's terrible. It's terrible.
This is weird. There's one interaction here that I do like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's between Apocalypse and Forge. I actually think Jeff Lemire writes a really good Forge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like, throughout this run, Forge is one of the characters that he understood and, like, had a clear vision and voice and purpose for. And he duct tapes Apocalypse's mouth shut. Apocalypse is not normal Apocalypse. He's a weird old Apocalypse from the future.
Yeah, he's sort of, he's been on a diet. He's not doing so hot. But
he's ancient Apocalypse.
Right. But I will give Lemire credit, despite the fact that he's shoehorned into the fact that he knows he's going to have to be doing IVX crossover stuff. He does bring this story up to sort of, this dramatic climax, and he does tie it all together, and gets everything returned to the status quo before moving on. So I like Ibanez's art here a lot.
Love the art in this. Victor's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah.
Wish he would have more going on.
Yeah. I love what he's doing here. And, I think we've said all we need to say about this because it's just not, it's not from the best era. And unfortunately, Lemire didn't have the room, I think, to do what he could have done with the book. So, I think for what it's a pretty good story.
I would love to see an unrestrained Jeff Lemire do the X-Men story that he wants to do at some point.
Sure.
It's never going to happen. He's happy doing his stuff. His time doing Big 2 comics, I think, is pretty much past him. Like he knows he can continue to sell pretty good on his own. So yeah, let's talk about this. It's not as good. Where do we have that one extraordinary issue? The one right after the 17.
Let's see.
159.
159. Okay.
It's not as good as that.
Where do we have
It's
negatives?
better than the first arc of Extraordinary at 335.
Ooh.
So somewhere between those.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's not great. What was I looking at before?
Negative Zone War is at 193. I think this is better than that.
I would agree. So I think we're in the right realm here.
Is it better or worse than that time that Colossus pretended to be a ghost?
I don't think it's as good as that.
It's looking up the list. It's not as good as the Age of Apocalypse, the Exterminated stuff.
No.
But it's probably better that it is probably better than that time that Excalibur was dinosaurs in Excalibur 51.
Yeah, and I think it's probably better than the Marvel Knights X-Men mini. Even though, well, that's an interesting one because that takes so many creative risks. But I think this is probably a more cohesive story, and I think I like the Ibanez art better. How do you think it compares to 189, which is the X-Force 71 to 74, the Road Trip?
Road Trip better.
Road Trip better.
Road Trip's better than this.
All right, so that's
this can be 190 though.
Yeah, this can be our new number 190. Extraordinary X-Men 13 to 16.
Kingdoms Fall. And this episode is going to fall now because we're done with it. We talked about all of these X-Men stories, and we're really glad that you were there to do that with us. But we're especially glad for Cat Fox, who, again, went on over to patreon.com/comicsxf and threw some money our way. That goes directly into the pockets of the contributors of comicsxf.com, where we have some incredibly good writing going on all the time. Today we put up articles that I'm very proud of, including one where Kenneth Laster says, "Hey, Laura Kinney should have weird hair. Why does she have normal hair? She should have dumb hair like Wolverine does." And then he drew a bunch of dumb hair that Wolverine could have, and I love it so much.
That brought such a smile to my face today, and it really does make a lot of sense. Why doesn't Noah pointed this out too? Why doesn't Laura look more like Logan? She's just this, beautiful person, but she really should be this little tree trunk troll of a girl. But I loved
I love her piece so much. Oh, it's good. Yep. I love having editorial control, and I love having contributors who know that they could say some dumb stuff, and if it makes me laugh, then I'll say, yeah, go do that. This is what... Listen. This is comic book journalism? And listen... Unless you're exposing the deep, seedy underbelly of the bad side of comics as a business, really all you're doing is PR stuff for like Disney or Warner Brothers. So maybe you can just like goof around every once in a while, and it's fine. And that goofing around is what your contributions to the Patreon helps keep alive. And we're really excited about that. We have a bunch of different levels. We're actually... as this has gone up, we've had our first Patreon live event for our $9.99 and up patrons. Yeah. And we've got other events that are coming next month. And then we got our Discord, which is a lot of fun. And you can check out, even without being a Patreon supporter, but you get a really cool gold badge and access to the secret exclusive Patreon lounge where we have bourbon and like fresh oranges.
There's
you have to bring your own
smoking jackets. It's a pretty cool place.
It's real fancy. I'm not gonna lie. We got a bagel tree there. Man, we got all the stuff that you can want. But no, it's cool. Love the support if you can. If you can't, that's fine too. Thank you again to Kat. And then go to, Xavier Files is not the name of the website. It's ComicsXF. Go there. Or on Twitter at ComicsXF. Hey, Adam, what's up?
Hey, guys, you can always follow me over at Arthur Stacy. Actually, if you're on Instagram, I've been doing some new artwork lately, and I could use some Instagram followers. I post the stuff. I've been doing some process stuff so you can see the artwork developed from sketches to finals. That's at instagram.com/adam.rec. So if you're on Instagram, and you want to see some artwork, maybe give a follow there. And if you like Russian literature, read The Master and Margarita and hit me up on Twitter. Would love to talk to some people about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, go follow Adam's Insta. It's a quality follow. Never try and find me.
No, don't do it.
I am a ghost in the machine. I live in your podcast eardrums, and that's as far as this relationship really needs to go. Y'all are great. I just am a hermit. But do you know who's not a hermit?
Who? Who's Zach?
Cable and X-Force.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna talk about X-Force next week. It's an all X-Force episode, and we got some weird X-Force stuff, including one that I'm excited to revisit tentatively.
I am pumped to pack my pouches with ammo and bring out my cardboard box shaped silver weapons that shoot lasers. I don't know.
Okay. Man, sometimes when you just yawn, you leave your co-host just dangling on a bit that has failed. And you see how they try and get themselves out of it. But until then, guys, this has been Battle the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!